So many of us are fearful right now. Of course, there are many reasons why we may be fearful in any set of circumstances. We could fear loss of dignity, we could fear loss of position, we could fear loss of health, we can fear loss of life even. There are so many things where we feel fearful when confronted with the unknown or with the uncertain or with something that we don't actually properly see. And of course, in the circumstances we find ourselves now, so many of those factors are all merging together. Indeed, there are even times when we can feel fearful of God himself. Now, it's interesting that in the Bible, we're told time and time again not to fear. Leaders are told not to fear the circumstances which they face, but to rather to be strong and courageous. Commanders are told not to be fearful of the battles they have to engage in, but to find a way to trust God in and through it. People are told that they need not fear what is in this world, if we can have a peace which actually comes from outside of it. And of course, that's exactly where the Bible urges us to find our peace at times like this. So often we put our hope in this world. The world will disappoint. But when our hope is in the person of Christ, he is able to carry us through. Even though we may not make it physically through, we can still make it well with him and also look forward to something which is yet to come. The command not to fear, therefore, in the Bible doesn't mean that we pretend nothing is happening. It doesn't mean to bury our head in the sand. It doesn't mean to pretend that there's nothing going on. It doesn't even mean that we can't bring our feelings and our concerns and our worries and our anxieties to God. We can. As a matter of fact, we're told expressly in Scripture to cast our anxiety on Christ, who alone is able to deal with them and who alone is able to look after us, regardless of the situation we find ourselves in. Now, it may seem an impossible command to fulfill. Do not fear. Now, there are one or two other times in the Bible where we are told what it means to fear rightly, and we may come to that on one of the later podcasts. But right now, why is it that we're told not to fear and not to act out of fear? You see one brilliant illustration of this in the Old Testament. When King Saul goes against God's wishes and does something he doesn't do, he stands before the prophet and he says, "Forgive me, I have sinned. I was afraid." His fear, in this case fear of people, led him to the wrong action and to do the wrong thing. And that's the trouble when we're motivated and driven by fear. It's not just that we may panic. It may be even when we decide to act, we could do something that actually is harmful either to ourselves or to others. It's wrong. We shouldn't do it. We need to be able to trust, even when we're not sure where the deliverance is going to come from. Now, there is another type of fear, of course, which is very debilitating. One of my ancestors, a man by the name of Joseph Mansfield, in the year 1891 was presented with a rather marvellous clock. The reason it was given to him was that he was the station master of a small train station in Northumberland. And on September the 12th of that year, he jumped onto the tracks to rescue a passenger who stood in the way of an oncoming express train. Now, I'm sure it wasn't the fact that he had no fear, but he knew something. When you are that terrified at the sight of something so unfamiliar hurtling towards you, you can simply be stuck, and the Bible never wants us to find us in that position, petrified by fear, unable to move, unable to respond. And the amazing thing is that when we're in that situation, we need one of two things. We either need to overcome that fear and then suddenly be able to move, or we need someone to rescue us. Maybe at times we need a combination of both of those things, and that's precisely what we see in the gospel of Jesus Christ. He steps into this world when we feel we're in danger of being paralyzed by fear and is able to take us out of harm's way. In that sense, we need not fear. And even when we look at someone like Stephen, the very first martyr who died for their faith, even though the circumstances were against them and there was so much uncertainty, in the midst of it they found a peace, not because their circumstances were pleasant, but rather they had found a peace with God, which was able to transcend even the terror of the situation they find themselves in. Right now, we're faced with so many challenges, but maybe we can start this week by again bringing ourselves to God, asking him to speak to our hearts, speak to our minds. Maybe we need to start by pouring out whatever our care and concern and anxiety is to him, and then ask him to be at work in us. We need not be petrified at this time, and we shouldn't certainly be paralyzed into indecision. Let's find a way to serve, let's find a way to reach out, and let's find a way to manifest the love that's been poured out so generously into our hearts, into the hearts of the most needy around us, to help them deal with the situations and the challenges that they're facing. May God bless you.